very, very strange. Okay, so there's a Russia, Ukraine.
Man,
I was optimistic. Looks like I was wrong.
I was too. Yep, I was just as wrong. Trump, Trump is like, let me back up. The Emir of Bahrain once said something in an unguarded moment when I was speaking with him at his beach house. He said that he hated King Hussein. He said, Hussein is like a flag. Wherever the wind is blowing, he goes like this. There's Hussein. And that's Donald Trump on so many issues. One of them being the Russia-Ukraine war. The Russians, not even the Russians, Putin simply has not done what Trump has told him to do. And Trump is so angry that he's begun lashing out by saying that Putin's disrespecting him, that he's going to be forced to supply new arms and weapon systems to the Ukrainians, despite the fact that he didn't want to, and that the war is going to continue on. I was talking to a contact of mine in Russia who's strongly pro-Putin, saying that Trump is a fool if he ever thought that Putin was going to take orders from him, and that the war will end when Putin wants it to end. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to be until the Russians are in the strongest possible position.
And that does appear to be the case. Mm-hmm. I wonder, I mean, look, I've read a lot about Putin. I've read the whole Philip Short biography. It's really worth reading. I think he's an impressive guy, but even impressive guys can make mistakes. I'm just wondering if Putin's kind of missing an opportunity here, maybe. It seems like he's not going to have in the United States, Trump is an unusually he's a non-anti-Russian figure, right? So he admires Putin. So mm-hmm. I don't know if Russia's going to have a partner like Donald Trump in the future. I mean, maybe Vance would be if he gets the nod, but maybe not, right? So I just wonder if it's like, maybe this is like a time for we often talk about how, the United States doesn't understand our adversaries or our negotiating partners. But it goes the other way sometimes too. And sometimes other countries don't really understand us famously, right? Like the Japanese really thought that we would take Pearl Harbor as sort of like a warning, like a swat on the nose, like that we wouldn't go to war over that.
Yes.
We wouldn't care. Hawaii wasn't a state. It was just a colony out in the middle of nowhere. It's, we would be like, okay, never mind, too much trouble. Yep. They didn't understand American culture or politics. I mean, do you think that's what's going on here? I mean, that's kind of like what I'm leaning toward. I feel like, Russia's gotten most of what it came for. And maybe at this point, it's like, you should bring it in for a landing.
I think I agree completely. Somebody told me just the other day that there was an interview in which Putin said that he preferred dealing with Donald Trump because Donald Trump gave him the things that he wanted, but that Trump was so unpredictable that dealing with Joe Biden was just simply easier. And I wonder if that's part of
it. Joe Biden.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The cabal that was Joe Biden.
Right. I'm
wondering if that's the case here. The German chancellor said over this past weekend, that Germany would no longer restrict how deep into Russian territory German drones and other systems could be used. That's a serious upgrade in the level of conflict. A serious upgrade. The U.S. still has such restrictions, but if the Germans are going to lift those restrictions, and the Poles are, and the French likely are, that means this war is going to get a lot worse before it gets any better, and more innocent civilians on both sides are going to be affected.
I mean, this feels like Putin is kind of he's playing Henry Kissinger in 1971, 72, right?
You know what?
Like,
I said the same thing a couple of days ago. Yes. You
like
beat
that,
the shit out of the North Vietnamese so that you can negotiate a couple of months from now from the strongest possible position. Yes.
and I think it's a mistake. I think it was a mistake in 1972. I think it's a mistake now. I think the whole idea of like softening people up by bombing them, it doesn't work psychologically. I mean, there's really no basis. I think maybe Serbia, the Kosovo War, is the closest example to bombing a country into submission, but it almost never works otherwise, right? I mean, for the most part, it unifies that country behind the whatever the government is, because the government is fighting the people who are bombing you. Bombing's so indiscriminate. It just doesn't, you're not softening anyone up. If anything, you're hardening their resolve and you're pissing them off. I mean, ultimately, when you sit down to negotiate, the less anger you've provoked, the easier it's going to be to start, moving, because you're going to have to get along at some point. You're going to have to make agreements. You're going to have to trust each other. That's
right. You're going to have to. So I agree with you. I think this is a terrible policy on both sides. It's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting too, because Trump really took issue with the Russians' refusal to go along with having the Vatican act as a neutral arbiter between Russia and Ukraine. But I'm like thinking, you do understand, right, that these are Orthodox countries, right, not Roman Catholic countries. I mean, it would, like, while you're at it, why don't you bring in, bring in like the Dalai Lama to do it? That might work better. You might need someone completely from outside.
Yeah, and listen,
almost like tone deaf.
And as an Orthodox Christian, I can tell you that nobody outside Russia respects the Russian Orthodox Church, because the Russian Orthodox Church during Soviet times, they were all KGB agents, and in post-Soviet times, they're all saps working for the Kremlin. So yeah, that's
Well, the only thing that's earning them some respect is that they've been banned in Ukraine, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, all right. So,
can I don't know. Something real quick. We had a comment, Joseph. You're absolutely right. It's the Ukrainians that are taking 99% of these civilian casualties. It's like the Russians just arbitrarily attack civilian sites, apartment buildings, schools, hospitals. I get it. I'm just saying that at longer ranges, it's more difficult to control the end result in these attacks. And if we're going to be pro peace, we have to be pro peace on both sides. Ted,
absolutely.
I think when the war started, it was before you became a host on Sputnik. Is that right?
I guess that's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just before. Mm-hmm.
I remember going into work that day and telling our boss, Mindia Gavishelli, that we couldn't say anything positive about Russia. I said, we've got to be able to speak our minds. And it was actually a part of my contract that I negotiated, that I was allowed to speak freely. And I started the show that day by saying, I understand the accusations against the United States and the West from 2014, but I unreservedly condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and I call on Russian troops to withdraw immediately. And nobody stopped me. Nobody interrupted me or tried to edit it out later. It ran. I'm sure I didn't make any friends at Sputnik Moscow, but they let it run. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he had told me when I started, that if I wanted to criticize Putin, I could. It makes sense that they would have to have that. I mean, look, it's not like I've told the story about being recruited to audition at MSNBC. You can't criticize the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it's like, what?
That's a bigger ask frankly, a Russian channel telling you, hey, it'd be great if you didn't criticize our president, that really wouldn't be that unreasonable. But they didn't ask it.
They asked me RT asked me for an interview one time when I was at Sputnik. It was when the Israelis did the operation with the pagers, remember, and they blew up half of Hezbollah. So I said, sure, I'll give you an interview. And the first question, they always ask loaded questions, of course. And so the first question was, isn't this a war crime to do something like this? And I said, yeah, it is. It's a war crime pretty clearly, because there's no thought given to civilian casualties. Do you think that people are going to be fired in Israel for this? And I was like, fired? No, this was a brilliant operation. It was like a stroke of genius.
If they're going to get medals.
Yeah, that's what I said. People are going to get medals and they're going to get promotions. Is it a war crime? You bet it's a war crime. But if your job is to kill as many of Hezbollah's leaders as possible, and you're the guy that came up with this idea to put explosives inside of all the leadership's pagers, oh my God, they're going to make you the head of Mossad after that.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. It was illegal, but it was brilliant.
It's like my take on this whole thing has been like, yeah, obviously the whole modern nation state system relies on respecting sovereign borders, and at a certain point just deciding, look, yes, borders have changed. You can look at historical maps and see countries have invaded each other, empires have expanded, they've collapsed. We know these borders change, but at a certain point, like after Metternich, we kind of decided we were going to try to stop doing that. And but that said, it's also true that the West and Ukraine provoked the war. That's true too. Yeah. By threatening to join NATO. I mean, it's like, and like I've always said, if the U.S. had, if the Warsaw Pact still existed and Mexico or Canada wanted to join them, I guarantee you we'd be in Ottawa or Mexico City in like 5 days.
Without a doubt. And I'll tell you another thing too, and I don't know why the media don't talk about this, but Belarus is a belligerent in this fight.
True.
The Belarusians allowed Russian troops to invade Ukraine through their own territory. That makes them a legitimate target of the Ukrainian military. But the Ukrainians have held off. Another belligerent in this is North Korea. It's one thing for mercenaries to go fight on one side or the other. That's going to happen in every war. But the North Koreans, as a country, as a government, committed troops, combat troops, to fight on the Russian side. That makes North Korea a belligerent in this, and it makes them sort of eligible for attack. Now, the Ukrainians don't have a reach to allow them to get to North Korea, but if they did, they could legally.
They could. No, for sure. So I guess the question now is, look, I don't know what new sanctions could be placed against Russia.
No. There are no new sanctions. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday about this vis-a-vis Iran. He asked me about sanctions, like what new sanctions could we put on Iran? The president is threatening new sanctions. And Forrest and Sebastian, you're absolutely right. Sanctions don't work. And I said, when I went to the CIA, we were always threatening new sanctions on Iran. And I said, what possible sanctions are there left that would allow us to push the Iranians one way or another on an issue? There are no sanctions. So when I got to the CIA, I realized a sanction is, okay, there's this guy, Ted Rall, and he criticized us. So he is not allowed to open a checking account in any of our banks. That's a sanction. And it's also bullshit with a capital B. But that's where we've gotten with the Russians, with the Cubans, with the Chinese, with the Iranians, with the North Koreans. None of these sanctions mean anything. Yeah.
Well, Pittsburgh dude is saying like, hey, Russia, would have to invade all of Ukraine to stop it from joining NATO. Yeah. Although, here's the thing is, if I was chatting with like President Putin, I would just remind him, and I'm sure he's well aware of this, in a way, this is kind of, the war kind of solves the problem because, NATO's rules don't allow any nation with a disputed border to join NATO.
Good point.
Clearly, Ukraine has a disputed border.
Yeah.
Clearly. And so you could just stop hostilities right now. And in a way, you've already won that. And no, you're not going to get denazification, and you're not going to get, you might be able to say, and they're not going to get demilitarization, nor really should you ask for it, because after all, you've already won a war.
Yeah.
I mean, you've already proven that.
But then that leads me to conclude that now is the time for the Russians to negotiate their deal and get out. Now is the time.
Now it's a good time. Yeah. I think the Russians can cut a good deal with Trump. I mean, they can just say, look, what they say. Yeah, I mean, the terms are clear, right? Okay, so the Ukrainians, their internal affairs are their internal affairs in terms of elections. They want to have Stefan Bandera statues all over their country. That's on them, whatever. They maybe have a DMZ, maybe 20 miles along the Russian line of control. You freeze the conflict. Crimea is recognized as Russian now and forever. The Donbass is just a dotted line. It's disputed forever. Ukraine never tacitly admits that it's gone, but craves to have it back the way that China craves to have Taiwan back, but doesn't make a move to get it anytime soon, maybe hopefully never. And we all pick up our toys and go home, and Ukraine joins the EU, and then Russia has an EU trading partner right on its border, which it wants.
Yes.
And that's it. I mean,
yes.
It's a good deal. And Putin can credibly declare victory at that point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He can say that he liberated the Donbass. He reclaimed Crimea. These ethnic Russians that were living in eastern Ukraine are now under Russian jurisdiction. That's a Russian victory. It's a Russian victory.
I mean, the war basically was hardly fought on Russian territory. It was in the Kursk region. I mean, it's kind of like shades of World War II, where it's the Germans took some of our land, as if only we didn't have. Too bad we don't have more of that.
Yeah,
no big deal, right? I mean, so, and I do think that the Ukrainians certainly can take pride in the fight that they fought. I mean, I think there's no shame in losing.
No,
I do think they lost. It's in a war, there's two sides, usually. One side wins, one side loses. It does not mean that both sides didn't fight valiantly. Mm-hmm. The Ukrainians fought well. I mean, they just weren't going to beat the Russians.
Right. Yeah, they're too big, too strong.
All right. Yeah. So, all right, we'll keep watching that. And then I guess finally, this story, I had a feeling, I'm guessing that you would find this interesting. So if you're a student of history, or you spend a lot of time in libraries where there's in the history section, you will sometimes see a row of military histories that all have this red binding, and they're very old-fashioned. They all look identical. They look like a series, and they're basically official U.S. military histories that go do a really deep dive using access to classified information, or that's recently declassified and basically for people who don't know, the U.S. military hires these top-notch historians to basically get the true, detailed, granular military, political, and social and cultural basis, but mostly the emphasis is on the military movements of every war. Every conflict, some that are very obscure that we don't think much about, and they're incredible resources for historians and students of history. And Donald Trump, as part of the DOGE stuff, just issued a blanket firing of all of these military historians. And there's fear that this is part of some kind of conspiracy to rewrite military history, but I think it's probably something derpier than that. I think Donald Trump didn't know who who these people were or what they did. He's never laid his eyes on one of these big red books in his life. And if he did, he'd be just, I mean, it's like if you read the CIA fact book, it's like, this is really good info. It's really solid. It's really intelligent. And like, these histories, no one else can do them. I mean, even if they're at Harvard or Yale or whatever, this is just, it's a unique resource. I mean, I don't know. It's sad when you have, someone who's an ignoramus.
Yes.
And it's Trump himself or people working for him and making budget cutting decisions.
The whole point of this group is to provide unbiased historical accounts that we can learn from later. Sorry, the building across from me is either on fire or the fire department thinks that it's on fire. I hope you can't hear all that activity.
It's probably a lot louder for you. I just heard
pretty darn loud.
A little fire truck honk.
But yeah, we need historians. There was a guy who replaced me in my first analytic position who went on to become the CIA historian, the actual historian. And that job sounds like a job for eggheads. It's actually a really important position. We need these people who have historical memories so that we can learn from the mistakes that we've made in the past. And I think you're right, Ted. Trump is like, what? Who? We have a bunch of people just sitting there writing histories. They're fired. They're all fired. Escort them out.
Yeah.
And they'll be back.
Even got that far, right?
They'll be back because of the Civil Service Act. You can't just fire people. You can't do it. So they'll be back.
And the thing is, they really do. I mean, it's hard to believe because, I mean, you and I both know all the propaganda that comes out of the military and out of the U.S. government. But that said, they do a good job of doing unbiased histories.
They do.
I mean, they really do.
Yes.
And, I mean, and it's actually amazing. Like, they really, truly will be ruthless about mistakes that were made and say who made them. And
that's right.
Amazing source of original, of firsthand accounts, original primary data, primary sources. Indeed. So, I mean, I'm just kind of like, I just want them to come back. Now, are these guys official? Are these historians employees?
Yeah, they're civil servants on the GS scale. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And there are a bunch of them at the Library of Congress too. They're what used to be called super grades. So the GS scale ends at 15, and once you hit 15, it's the top level, and then you can be promoted into the senior executive service. So these guys are what are called super grades. They're GS 16, 17, and 18. So they're not supervisory in any way, but they're, the smartest of the smart who can write these deep thoughts.
And
Ted, are you going to the? I'm boycotting the parade. And I tell you what, we had a military parade. It was the Gulf War Victory Parade in the spring of 1991, and of course, I worked very hard during the Gulf War at the CIA, and I still boycotted it because I don't believe we should have military parades. Just philosophically, I don't think we should have them. I think they're awful. They're gross. They glorify, violence and murder. And
that's true.
Yeah. No, I'm boycotting.
The only reason I've seen a few military parades in like Uzbek and Kazakh, like Independence Day. And they have like a military, parade in like at the time Almaty and Tashkent.
Yes,
they were cool. So the part also because it's like former Soviet weaponry, which I find, I have nostalgia from the Cold War, just looking at it. But of course, I mean, the thing is, it just doesn't seem fundamentally American. It's just not something that we do.
No,
it's not ideological. But on the other hand, I wonder, like, if we were to see all the weapons, would we think, oh, that's great, this is where our tax dollars are going? Or would we say, God, why are we wasting money on these expensive weapon systems?
Yeah, right. And you know what? I remember in the 91 parade, the tanks just destroyed the streets. It destroyed Constitution Avenue in Washington, and it had to be repaved. So it's not even worth it.
Yeah, that's true, because people don't understand tank treads. So there were, I didn't know that. So I was adjacent. I told you I went to the DMV when we had the Gulf War Victory Parade here in New York, but it wasn't a military parade. It was a ticker tape parade down Broadway.
Ours was actually a military parade with hardware. Yeah.
Wow.
It was bad.
That's crazy. I guess I missed that somehow.
Everybody in the CIA was going to this thing, so I volunteered for weekend duty. I figured I might as well make a couple of $100. I was
when is it?
Anyway. It was in spring of 1991 is when that one was. This one Trump's talking about, I'm not 100% sure is going to take place, because our friend and colleague, former colleague, Brian Becker, brilliantly will get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to be the first in line at the Department of the Interior to apply for parade permits for every one of the routes that could be used for a military parade. He single-handedly blocked Donald Trump's military parade in the first term.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
He got there when the window opened at 7 a.m. He had the forms already filled out, and he reserved Constitution Avenue, Pennsylvania Avenue, Connecticut Avenue, Independence Avenue. He reserved everything, and Trump had to cancel the military parade.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
I just saw brilliant. I guess I'd heard about this, about the posters of Trump on the side of government cabinet department buildings in DC, but specifically the Department of Agriculture has a giant, dictator type picture of Trump next to a dictator picture of Abe Lincoln.
Oh my God. I haven't seen that.
Abe Lincoln is not a friend of mine, but I know about Abe Lincoln, and you know what I'm going to say. I mean, what the hell? I mean, how is this being allowed? I mean, how is this okay? I mean, I don't know.
It's not okay. No.
Well,
I'm always exhausted at the end of these shows. Now I'm exhausted and I'm pissed off.
Sorry, I apologize. We could do, it would be fun just to do a completely pop culture, frivolous, TV show, what's on TV, White Lotus.
Right. My sister keeps telling me I have to watch it. I'll tell you, I would love to talk about the P. Diddy trial, but I'm afraid that our viewers are going to beat us up over it.
We could, there's going to be more. So why don't we do P. Diddy next time?
Okay.
Because we're already running over an hour here.
Yeah, we're over.
Always leave them wanting more. No, I'm interested in the P. Diddy thing. So I have takes that might be unusual. Oh, someone's people are they're very divided. Yeah. And we'll all, and there's a request for Q&A. Hey, we always take the questions.
Yeah. Just type the question in the chat. Definitely.
Yeah. I was joking about dictator Abe Lincoln, although kind of not really, because he did suspend habeas corpus. That's kind of a dictatorial move.
Yes.
And he kind of cheated in the 1864 election too. So, kind of. Poor General McClellan. He didn't deserve that.
No, he didn't.
No,
he was the fall guy, but that's a whole different conversation.
He was the Washington Generals. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. DeProgram will be back later this week. We're going to try to keep on this schedule for Wednesdays. We'll see if we can do that. So Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. on the West Coast. Keep it here. And we're probably going to try for Saturday.
We're going to do Saturday. Yeah.
Saturday at 12 noon Eastern, I think, is what we're going to try to do. Try to make that a regular schedule. Last Saturday's show went really well. So we're hoping that there's going to be more than that. We're going to post some clips too after the show. But thanks everybody for tuning in to DeProgram. Please hit like, please subscribe, please follow, and please share us on your socials. It literally is going to make or break whether we can keep doing this. But so far, things are moving in the right direction. So we just need to keep it going.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Take care.